Okay, good. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I was testing with my colleagues to see that you can see me okay. I think that's the case. And I want to welcome all of you to this webinar on applying for consultative status with Ecosoc. I really thank you. We have a lot of people joining from all over the world, and I appreciate the interest on this webinar in particular, but also on applying for consultative status or considering applying for consultative status and contributing to the work of Ecosoc. This is very important for us. My name is Diego Rumiani. I am Program Officer at the NGO branch in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs at the UN. I'm here in New York. The objective of this presentation or the way that we are going to structure this is I'm going to talk about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just to introduce you to different topics. We are going to go into what is consultative status, the eligibility, the requirements, the benefits of it, why you should consider applying. Then we're going to move into the application process itself, what happened when you apply, what are the timelines, what are the things you will be expecting as part of the application process, and then the components of the application, what are the things you need to fill out to obtain, and we're going to have a quick look at the system so you know already what are the steps you have to fill out. We're going to go quickly on that. We don't have a lot of time. But also I'm going to give you different tools that you can use to learn later or to ways to contact us during, after the presentation, after this event. I want to mention also that questions can be raised at any time. You have a Q&A section there where you can write any questions you want. For a purpose of being organized, I'm not going to be answering these questions during the presentation, but we're going to have a very extensive, I hope, Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I'll try to address some of these questions, as many as possible. I also, if we have time, I'm going to give you the floor to some of you to raise those questions if you prefer to say it out loud in the meeting. I'll explain you how we're going to do that later, but you can definitely ask questions. I have some colleagues here who might be also answering these questions while I'm speaking, so you may have an option to also get some answers without waiting until the end for the Q&A. So that's basically what we are going to be doing today. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about this process of consultative status. So consultative status is a relationship that was established with Ecosoc back in 1996. There is a resolution that you can look at. It's Ecosoc Resolution 1996-31, in which the council regulated the way in which NGOs could participate with the council. I mean, there were participation before 1996, but then this was formally regulated in 1996, and this is the resolution that we are following now. And this relationship is become very beneficial, and it became very popular. We have more than 5,000 NGOs already with this relationship, and we have an increasing demand every year. The interest on this webinar, I think, is a testimony of that. That more and more people want to join for consultative status. So why is that? I mean, what are the benefits of consultative status? Well, I usually like to divide this between formal and informal benefits. The formal benefits are the ones you will find in the resolution and in most of our literature that you can actually see on our website, csonet.org. We're going to talk more about our website. But these benefits translate into different channels of participation into intergovernmental processes. First of all, the first benefit that you can see, a very common, the more direct way of Participating is you're going to be getting a ground pass for you and colleagues of the NGO if you get a consultative status to attend events at the UN in the main duty stations where Ecosoc events are going on. That's in New York, the headquarters of the UN, but also in Geneva and in Vienna. So there are procedures for you to obtain ground passes to access the premises and attending events, mostly Ecosoc events. But I also want to clarify that because consultative status became a very popular mechanism of engagement, other bodies start using consultative status as a way of accepting, as an eligibility for attending events. The most common one outside Ecosoc is the Human Rights Council in Geneva. That's a very popular venue for NGOs, but there are other events where consultative status is now required. So even though consultative status was conceived as an Ecosoc, and it is an Ecosoc process, you have to see that consultative status will give you access to other mechanisms of participation as well. So that's also very important for you to consider. Apart from attending these meetings, you also have a way of having a more interactive approach with these processes. You can submit written statements to some of these meetings, particularly the commissions of Ecosoc. That's a very popular mechanism for engagement through written statement and also oral participation or oral statements in which you can address the commissions or the council through different moments. That also becoming very, very popular, and we also have a strong demand, and also that's regulated by the resolution. So you really have the right, if you wish, to address either in writing or in orally. There are, of course, other mechanisms for addressing, but I want to address also the informal ways, and this is a big portion of this is the reason why NGOs really approach consultative status, is the informal mechanisms of participation. It's very common for NGOs to organize side events next to these big meetings, and that's becoming a very popular. So this is a good way to showcase your work, to exchange ideas with other participants, to access member states delegates, to access UN officers. So the showcasing in the terms of events or other type of in the context of big meetings is something that is very much in demand. The other mechanisms are basically, is networking. You know, you will have access to different persons from other NGOs, from member states, from UN officers, from corporations, from different sources, and that will be is also very good and very beneficial for NGOs, and that's another benefit you have. So consultative status gives you a very good way of interacting, but also not only attending events, but also participating and also contributing to the work of Ecosoc. In many of these events, you can share your projects, you can share what you're doing, you can also obtain experience from other people. So that's, I think, the main benefits, and over the years, what brought a lot of NGOs on board. I'll show you some materials you can see if you want to explore more in details this benefit. I cannot really go into detail of all the meetings and all the events you can address. That's something I also recommend you in the process of your application to research on, to look at what are the particular channels you would like to contribute and you would like to get yourself involved, depending on what the NGO objectives are and what is the strategy that you have. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the eligibility and the application process. So all NGOs with 2 years of existence at the time of applying are eligible to apply. They're actually eligible, and I'm going to tell you a little bit how this works. The moment you decide to apply, if you really conclude that this is a process for you. This is a type of interaction you want to have, and you really want to commit yourself to this participation internationally. Then, of course, the first step on doing this is to apply, to submit an application. So we'll talk about the components of that application, but if you decide to apply, you can apply right away. We receive application throughout the year at any point in time. However, and I want to be very clear on this, we have a cutoff date, which is June 1st. That's a date that is regulated by the Ecosoc Resolution 1996-31, and at that date, we schedule all applications received by that date into the committee of the following year. So, for instance, this June 1st is an important date, and includes June 1st until the end of the day, New York time. You can submit your application, and that application is scheduled to be reviewed during next year during the Committee on NGO. That application could be will be addressed by this committee, and we will be reviewed. Any application received after June 1st, we're still going to accept it, but it's going to be reviewed only in 2023, because it's going to be the ones that we are reviewing right now are for 2022. So that's why it's important. You still have a month if you haven't started, so that's plenty of time. But if you really want to be considered in 2022, then you have to apply before June 1st this year, and before the end of June 1st, New York time, 12 a.m. New York time. And then at that moment, you will be scheduled for that committee. Right now, of course, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and there is a lot of difficulties. There were difficulties this year and last year for the committee to meet. So we are having delays in processing applications. So we are doing the best we can to fulfill this schedule. But of course, I have to tell you and be honest with you that you can expect some delays in the process because there are a lot of applications from previous periods that are still being reviewed and still being submitted to the committee. But the idea and our mandate is to deliver those applications in that sense. So everything that was submitted since 2nd of June 2020 and 1st of June 2021, we are scheduling that for 2022. So that's why important if you consider to apply to do it in the next month. So what happened after you submit your application? Let's assume you apply within this month. Well, in the following month, we will get to your application at some point in the NGO branch where I work, and we are going to be looking at your application and contacting you if we think there is some issues with it, and if we feel that there is something missing or there is some eligibility problems. So whatever issue we find from a technical point of view, we will try to address it, to contact you, and to basically help you to be in shape with a good application for the committee. After that, and assuming that your application is fine, we will submit the application to the Committee on NGO. This is a committee that meets twice a year. Of course, this year, as I said, it's meeting now in May, so it couldn't meet in January because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but normally meets twice a year, and it's going to look at your application. And of course, they may also have questions for you, which will be addressed during that committee. During the session, you will be able to attend, depending on the different accessibility we have right now. Of course, attending events at the UN is still very, very limited, but hopefully by next year that will be much better. But also you can follow these meetings online, so there's no way you will miss these meetings. And then the other way in which you will be able to follow that is through press releases that the UN is also showing what are the cases that were reviewed and where were the results of that. So there are different ways in which you will be informed of what's going on with your application, and we also going to be showing and we are going to be telling you how to follow also ourselves through our website and through our communication. Assuming your application have no questions by the committee, or the questions are clear during that interaction that happened during these two meetings, which one is normally in January, the other is normally May next year, and assuming that the committee is satisfied with your responses and with your application, the committee issue what we call a recommendation to obtain consultative status. So the committee is not making the decision itself, but is recommending to obtain that you can obtain consultative status, and that is then sent to the council. The council, based on whether you were in January or in May reviewed, will meet in June or July, and that's when you are officially, assuming of course there is no other problem, obtaining consultative status in June, July. So the earliest, and this is very important, this is a long process, unfortunately, you have to wait until you obtain consultative status, but the earliest you can get, and assuming there is no big difficulties, no questions, and everything goes smooth, if you apply right now, the earliest you can get is in June next year. Okay, and at that moment you get your Crown Pass, you can attend events, so you are officially in consultative status. So this is the whole process. Again, our objective is to inform you throughout the process, particularly now at the beginning, on all the components and all the things you have to submit. But also, we ask you always to follow to check your email periodically to see if you have to provide additional information, because this is not over until you obtain the consultative status. The committee or ourselves could interact with you throughout the process. And because we have such a high number of applicants every year, the committee and ourselves also, we are very strict in terms of communication. We really want you to be engaged, so we can allocate a fair amount of time to each applicant. So that's very important for us. So now I'm going to move into what you actually have to submit. I'm sure some of you have questions on that. I'm going to be very generic. Of course, there are a lot of specific questions you may have, and I'll see if I can address some of this during the Q&A, but some of them, of course, will have to contact us directly, because I'm sure some will be very specific. But I'm trying to be general. So there are three different components, I should say four actually components of what we call the application package. One is a form which contains 21 questions, and we will see some of these questions. I'm not going to again be able to address each question individually. The questions are straightforward, and we provide a lot of guidance on how to answer these questions. And I will show you in the system a little bit more about what those questions are about. Then there are three required documents that we need as part of your application. One is a proof of existence. As I told you, the eligibility for consultative status requires that you have to be 2 years at the time you're applying. It's important. I always want to highlight that it's at the time of applying. You may acquire 2 years by the time you're reviewing, but our requirement says that you have to have 2 times at the time you choose to apply, you submit your application. This document has to be issued by a governmental authority, and it has to be under the name under which you're applying. So that's also very, very important. The other document is a constitution or bylaws, or in different parts of the world has different names. We don't care so much about the name. What we care is that it contains the structure of the organization, the way its governance structure works, and how it makes decisions, the decision-making process of the organization. That's also crucial, that is explained in detail. We want to see how the organization operates internally and how it's structured to carry its functions. The third component is a financial statement. That has to be, of course, the most recent financial statement. We want to see the situation you have as recent as possible. We understand that financial statements, it takes time to elaborate in some cases. we are understanding of that. So the most recent you can provide it is going to be probably fine. I don't want to get technical on the finance. We can get if you have a particular question, but the important thing here on the financial statement is that you at least present a balance sheet and an income statement. That's the two basic components of the financial statement that we need to have to evaluate not only your financial structure, but also your sustainability and how you are carrying out your functions. You know, normally the work requires financial resources, and that's the way we evaluate that. So that's important on the financial statement. So these are the four components. All applicants have to fill all that. The financial statements, sorry, the three documents need to be presented in English or French. So if your original, the language of this document from your country are originally in another language, you need to translate that into English or French. You can choose whatever is easier for you. We don't require official translations, so we don't want you to spend money or time in trying to obtain official translation. You can do the translation yourself because we really care about the information. The only document we also need, the original in whatever language it is the proof of existence, because we need to evaluate that that actually is a document issued by your government. Of course, your government could be in English or French, so in that case, you don't need to present a translation, but for everybody else whose the government operates in a language different than English or French, we need the translation. But again, you can do that yourself. So this is important in terms of language. I haven't said it, but the application form also can be filled out in English or French. These are the true working languages of the United Nations. So you can actually submit that in any of these two languages. You have a place at the beginning of your application where you can select the language in which you're going to be filling out the form. So that's pretty much how the application package works and how is the component. Now I'm going to switch a little bit to our system, so we can actually see a little bit how this feels when you have to actually sit there and start working on the application. I know we currently have some statistics. I know a lot of you already started working with the application. That's great because of the timing. You know, we have 1 month for June 1st. So that's good, and I'm sure you may have some specific question about that, but I know a lot of people actually haven't started and are considering this process. So we also it's gonna be useful for them as well. So I'm gonna now share the screen. And I'm gonna ask, in order to share the screen, I'm gonna ask my colleagues to make me, I think I have to be a presenter to share the screen. I'm waiting for that, but thank you. All right, so I'm checking with my colleagues. Trying to move this. Okay, I'm checking with my colleagues to see if the screen is seen. Okay, great. So you should all be seeing the screen. I'm actually going to go to another screen first, which is the csonet.org. This is the NGO branch website. It's a place that you're going to be probably visiting very often as you fill out your application, but as I said, throughout the application process until you hopefully obtain consultant status. And then I want to show you some material that will complement this presentation, because a lot of things can be explored. We have, as you know, limited time, so I cannot really cover absolutely everything, but there are a lot of things you can explore. One thing I want to say, we have a very friendly booklet here that you can download in several languages. As I said, the application needs to be done in English or French, but you have instructions in multiple languages here that we've been translated for you. So this is very useful for the application process, but also for Ecosoc, for understanding the benefits of Ecosoc and also finding your way. You know, for NGOs have not been exposed to the UN, sometimes it could be very difficult to know, how I can use best my time in the UN and how I can involve in the different processes. So this is a very good guide for that. The other document I want to advise you to do, if you go to to application for consultative status, apply for consultative status. Here you have all the instructions to apply, but I want to particularly put emphasis to a step-by-step video that we have on how to apply, which is very useful. We are going to do a little bit of this right now, but this you can go back, and if you get lost at some point, you can also use that. By the way, I didn't mention this webinar will also is being recorded, and it will be available in our website as well after we finish a day or two. So also, if you miss something, you can also go back and visit. And I want you also to pay attention to this questionnaire, which is in English or French. Here is the English version, which shows you a lot of guidelines on how to fill out the questionnaire, which shows you not only the question that you're going to be asked, but particular things that we've been advising NGOs over the years on things to pay attention when filling out and not to miss things that might be important for the evaluation of your application. So this contains a lot of useful information. I really recommend you to go through this as you fill out the questions, because a question seems straightforward, but there are some parts that may not be so straightforward, and this will give you a good hints. We call these hints to fill out the questionnaire. All right, so this is just a quick tour of our website. Here you can have information on when the committee is meeting, and the composition of the committee, and everything about consultative status you can also find here. In particular, I'm going to go now to our database, which is where you're actually going to be filling out the application. And you go to the ICSO database, and I'm going to be logging in as an application that I created. This is a test dummy application for your for you to to serve as an illustration. So it doesn't contain any information that makes sense. It's just was created to show you the process. So I log in. So you have to log in, and you will see that my application is currently incomplete. So as soon as I go to the application, and I see that I'm filling out my application, so it has not been submitted yet, you can see the different sections of the application, which are 4 sections within the form. So this is, remember I mentioned 4 components. The first component is the application form, and is divided in 4 sections, okay? Each section has a number of questions. The total number of questions is 21, as I said. And I'm not going to go question by question, but what I'm going to do is show you a little bit what is the objective of each section, and what is the type of information you need to think and you need to put together for this application. So the first section, we call it the general section, and as it contains, of course, general information, but this is mostly the most substantive part of the application. Here we show basically the aims and objective of the organization, the projects that it's being carried out or is planning to carry out. And one important question I always like to highlight, question 5A, which is how you're planning to contribute to Ecosoc. This is an important thing for you to think about, because the Ecosoc consultative status is not only a place you join and you attend events, but you also have to think, what are you going to bring to the table? What are the things that you're going to be contributing to Ecosoc in the process? So this is the place where you have to actually provide that information. And also projects and other activities you're going to be doing, if you attended UN conferences, these type of things. So this section is the most substantive. This is who you are, what you do, what are you planning to do, and what you're bringing to Ecosoc. That's a very quick way of summarizing the information that you have to put together to fill out this section. The second section we call registration structure, and this is if you want a more operational part of the application. Here, we want to know more about how you organize yourself to achieve these objectives we talked in the previous section. And here you see the countries in which you are established or you are operating. We see things like your coverage, regional, national, international, these type of things. Your membership, if you have members, and your relationship with the government, your relationship with private sector, your relationship with other NGOs. So how you interact with partners and different stakeholders to achieve your objectives. And also the relationship with NGOs that are or are not in consultative status. So an important thing here I want to say is that in general, in this application form, you want to be very detailed. You want to specify as much as possible names of organizations, names of projects, dates where these projects occur, location, results obtained. So you want to be detailed. You don't want to leave things very vague, because this could raise questions either by us or by the Committee on NGOs. And questions will always delay the process, because they need to wait until you provide a response. And because there are so many applications, this could lead to your case being deferred. So you really want to be able to anticipate, if you want to, potential questions that you think they may raise by being very detail-oriented and very specific. When they ask you to provide examples, you really want to give specific examples. This is one clarification I want to make. The other clarification is that more and more, this information is also reflected in your website, and you also want to be consistent with the information you put on your website. That's actually very important, because delegates and we also look at your website, and we also don't want to find any inconsistency, because that also will raise to questions. So also be aware that the information you provide is consistent with your website. You don't have to have a website. Some NGOs don't have a website, and that's totally fine. I'm just saying for the ones that have a website. But of course, this is more and more common, so we have to, you have to be aware that we are going to look at your website as well to understand more about what you do. The other section is the income and expenditure section. This, I will not like you to confuse this with the financial statement. This is a particular presentation that contains financial information that you have to fill out for the more recent year, and in which you have to show the income and expenditures you obtained for the last year you reported, that you closed. This presentation can be very limited, because you just put lines with names and numbers, and that's it. So I really encourage NGO to use the comments on the bottom to really provide any clarification. Again, you don't want everything to be interpreted. You want to, everything that you think that might not be clear, you want to specify in the comment section. Any clarification on your result for the year, on particular lines that you don't have time to, you don't have space to write here, you may want to clarify here. You have a lot of space to write and to clarify on your finances. And that's an important thing. Finances is a place that the committee addresses a lot. They look a lot at your financials. So even though it's the last part of the application form, don't think it's the least important. Actually, it's very important. And then you have a summary section, which contains a lot of the fields you already filled out. So the only new thing here will be the membership, where you have to actually specify in how many countries you are. If you are in many countries, you can be, of course, national organizations are more than welcome. And the number of individual or organization members if you work on a membership structure. So that's also where you specify here. So these are the 4 sections. You want to make sure that these 4 sections are fulfilled. You have a little tool here where you see which part is fulfilled and which parts you still have to complete. And the system will not allow you to submit until you fulfill all the components. There is one component that we haven't addressed yet, and of course are the documentation. I told you that this is the application form, that's one component, but we have 3 more, which are in the document section. So the document is a place where you basically upload files, okay? You may upload 3 files at least because you need a certificate or proof of existence, constitution and financial statement. However, because of translation, this could turn into more files. In some places, they require more registration at different levels of governments. We are fine with 1, but you may want to submit others. So you're welcome to submit other files. What we ask you, please, is to submit only these files. So any literature, any other information that is not these 3 documents, I mean, you can upload it, the system will allow you, but we are not going to look at it. It's not going to be part of the information that is going to be used to evaluate you. So you're going to be really wasting your time uploading that information. We really appreciate if you focus on that. That will also speed up your review because we will focus only on those documents that are the required documents that I explained before. So you can upload by clicking new document, you can edit your document, you can remove them if you change your mind. The important thing is after you submit the application, this is all frozen, so you cannot change things anymore. You can look at it, you can look at what you responded for reference, so you still have access to your full application, but you're not going to be able to modify it or upload new documents because at that moment we start the review. So we really don't want to have more things as we could follow the review. So that's an important thing for you to know, that when you submit, it's basically the application is submitted, like you really cannot change it anymore. To submit your application, I want to show you this because some people may have problems with that. When you are in the application, you're going to go to the last page of the application. And of course, to edit this, you have an update button here. That's how you fill out your application. And then at the bottom of it, you have a submit button. I'm not going to press it here because it will submit this and I cannot show you anymore. But after this, you'll get a confirmation message and an application is submitted. Okay. We have sometimes problems with applicants not pressing the submit button, basically doing everything and not pressing the submit button. Unfortunately, that application is not submitted. We cannot really access until you don't tell us we are done. So please remember to press the submit button. Very, very important to do that. All right, so that's the application form and the application components. Last thing I want to show you, well, of course, you have the profile. That's the first step you create with your basic information. But I want to show you the correspondence. The correspondence section is a section that where you can actually interact with us. And again, we will interact. We'll have a Q&A session in a few minutes. But we really want to have a dynamic conversation with you. So any question you may have related to your application, about this webinar in the future, about the following up on your application, of course, we're going to give you information as we have it all through this system. But you can actually send us a message here in the correspondence section. This is like an email. That's your personal email, new message. You select the category. We always tell you select application. You can, of course, contact us for other things we do, but at least for people who are now involved in the application for consultative status, you want to select this. You put the subject, you put your message. You can even attach files in case we need additional information. We may request you, maybe there is a problem with the financial statement, you need to send us another one. So this is the place where you're going to be sending this documentation. So this is the place we're going to be talking ourselves and also with the committee. You can check this all the time by going to the correspondence section. Every time you get a message, also you're going to get an email notifying that you got a message in this system, so you know also that you received. You don't have to come here all the time. You will get an email. But for the email, it's very important that you get this email correct and checked all the time. This is another very important aspect of this process. This process could take, we say already, could take at least a year, and sometimes it takes much more. So it's important that the email you put in your profile, in the headquarters address of your profile, is the email you're going to be checking, you're going to be alert, and you're going to be following, because all our communication, everything that we send you through the correspondence, will be sent through this email. If you don't have it, we have no other way of reaching you by that email that you provide to us. So it's very important that you keep that email updated all the time. All right, so this is something I always want to highlight. All right, so again, I can spend another half hour with you on this, but I really want to make it short so we have room for the Q&A because we also have limited time. So now I'm going to stop sharing the screen. All right, and you should see me now. I'm just checking that we are fine with my colleagues here. I don't want you to be lost in the process. All right, so what I'm going to do now is first start with some Q&A that you've been writing. I see a lot of questions that I have from you, and I'm going to be addressing, but also I'm going to give you the floor at some point to some of you. So let me see, I'm going to pick randomly. We have a lot actually, and thank you for the interest. Let me see. Okay, that's a very good question and relevant to the times we are living. Someone here is asking me what happened with projects that has been carried out before the pandemic. I mean, a lot of NGOs have not been able to do a lot of work in the last year or so because of the pandemic. A lot of things has been postponed, and I told you about our committee also has been postponed. So that's totally understandable, and that's something you may want to clarify in particularly in this time of the year in your application, because I'm sure all the activities and all the work you planned to do in 2020 probably has not been done, or very few activities, probably mostly virtual, I guess, will done. So in the questions that relate to the activities in the recent past, it's totally fine if you go before 2020 and you talk about 2019. That's totally understandable, and of course this is a global problem, so we all in the same boat here, and we understand that 2020 was probably not a lot of action going on, at least for some NGOs. I know some NGOs were actually very active and very helpful in combating the pandemic, and that will be the opposite. Probably they'll have a lot to talk about 2020, but that's totally fine. Let me get another question. So here they're asking if we have a rejection for administrative reasons, can we reapply? The question is yes. So during our review, we try to basically try to solve our problem. The NGO branch will contact you. If you have an outdated financial statement, we ask you to send us a new one. But there are some things that you will be able to provide, and some things that you're not. If you're not eligible because you don't have 2 years, there's nothing you can do about it but to wait. So in those cases, those cases are closed. That's our policy. We need to close those cases because that application cannot be submitted to the committee. But applications that we close can be submitted again right after, if you want, if you're ready to apply. So there is no time for reapplication when we close incomplete cases or cases that are not eligible. So you can actually submit a new application. Then let me see other questions. Hold on. This is a very good question. They're asking, is there a minimum revenue that an NGO must have to be eligible? Can grassroots NGO with minimal activities apply as well? The answer is totally yes. I mean, you can. This is a very good point. We don't have any limitation in terms of income. We don't accept NGOs above certain above certain budget. We accept all NGOs. What we actually request NGOs that maybe they don't get a lot of contributions, or their contributions are maybe not so easily quantifiable. A lot of NGOs works just with volunteers, so there is no salaries, there is no a lot of fundraising. Is just volunteers doing work. Is try to quantify as much as possible what you can in order to complete the income and expenditure. So sometimes you receive funds, or you receive goods, or you receive contributions that are really not money. Try to quantify that in order to build your budget. It's important that your financial statement contains that information, so we can see that the work you're doing is manifested with resources, which could be human resources, but we need to quantify that. So we try to appeal to NGOs to try to quantify that information as much as possible. If you're not able to do that because you really cannot do it, then use the comment section in the financial statement to explain that. Those things has to be clear for the reviewers, for the committee, that it's not that you forgot to do it or that you really are not doing much. You really are doing a lot, but for whatever reasons, you're getting minimum contributions, or whatever is the circumstances. Everything that could raise a question, and this could definitely raise a question, can be solved with a good explanation. And I always try to encourage people to do that. What I'm going to do now is try to bring some participants on board. And I'm going to ask you you have the option to raise your hand to speak. That's a little button on, that you have is a little hand you have on the lower right hand, should be on your screen. If you want to take the floor, I would like to have some interaction. It doesn't matter if you already asked a question in writing or not, we can have this conversation. All right, so I'm going to give the floor here to Linda Lopez. I'm asking my colleague who has to unmute you so you can talk. And I'll tell you when you have the floor. Linda Lopez.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. My question was about the participation of, in cases in which government has to, we understand that government has to vouch for the organization that is applying. I just wanted to clarify that what happens in those cases where the government has a restrictive relationship or a difficult relationship with NGOs, particularly human rights NGOs and women's rights NGOs, if the government will never vouch for those NGOs to have being consultative status with Ecosoc. So what happens then? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Very good question, and that's is common, and we face situations like this. The requirement, this is a requirement that was established, it's a practice that was established by the committee, is that organizations need to provide a proof of existence issued by a governmental authority. That's normally is a certificate of registration, although in different countries could be different things. And this could be issued by different governments. So it not necessarily be, and some organizations are working on a particular area, but they are registered in another government. So we get those proof of existence if that is the case. And so we need to get a proof of existence that the organization exists by the government. That doesn't mean the organization is necessarily that the government is vouching for that organization or that particular government, but we need to have that proof of existence. That is a requirement. But as I said, it could be from other governments. Also, I want to say that in some places, registration is really not required as such, but we still need to get a proof of existence issued by government. Some NGOs present income taxes exemptions because normally they seek that exemption to operate. That is also a document that attests existence, and we normally accept that. So the point to the question is what we have in these situations is normally organizations obtaining proof of existence because they are established in another government, in another country, I should say, and that other government is providing that information. That is what we found normally. That was the way to resolve and to address this requirement. I hope that answered the question. I'll move to some other participant. I'll have I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong, is Thierry Capel, is Thi, I'm spelling it for my colleague here to give you the floor, Thierry.
Yes, Thierry.
All right, there you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Thierry Pele. I'm the head of executive of the Organization of African Youth for Peace. And last year, we have submitted the application for Ecosoc consultative status. But until now, there is no response, there is no answer. So I have a question. Do we need to apply again, or you have to wait for 2021?
Okay, thank you for your question. For the particular application, I mean, I'll have to go and check the application. I cannot do it right now. What I recommend you to do is the fact that you haven't heard from us doesn't mean that your application is not being processed. So what I recommend you to do in your case, because this is a specific case, is that you write to us. I just show you how you can write to us through the correspondence tab to first follow up for your application. So if you haven't heard from us, it could be that we actually didn't get to your application. As I said, we are having delays in processing applications, so that will not be totally strange if that is the case. But you want to make sure that we did have your application and we did receive it. If you submitted, we had it. And if we didn't try to reach you. If it's just that we haven't addressed your application yet, unfortunately, it's just time that you have to wait to do it. If your application was addressed and maybe we found some issues and we closed it and we reached you, but it was a different email or there was a problem with the communication, then yes, you may need to apply again. But I cannot tell you one way or the other until I see your application and my colleagues will see it. So the only thing I can tell you is that you just write to us to follow up on it. All right. I'm going to look at some other questions that you wrote in the Q&A because you wrote a lot. Don? Let me see. Okay, this is a good question, I think. I'll try to summarize it. I'm not going to put all you wrote here. But there is one applicant here who is actually saying that they have a very big financial statement. And that's true. Some financial statement could be endless, have a lot of pages, a lot of sections, a lot of elements. And of course, that needs to be translated, I assume, because it's not in English or French. So they're asking, should we translate the whole thing? Or should we create a special document with the information we need? Again, we want to be practical here. Of course, the ideal, if you have a big financial statement, maybe it's because it's an organization that has a lot of financial information and that can be very useful for the committee. So if it's possible, the ideal is to translate everything. Now, if you have a problem of time or resources or whatever, if you present a summarized financial statement that at least contains as much as you can of the information that you think is going to be solving questions. So for instance, of course, an income statement, a balance sheet, you can add a cash flow. And I'm assuming this is an organization that have a significant amount of funds. So when you are a big organization, you want to be detailed in your finances as much as possible. So maybe a distribution of the donors, that more details that you normally want to have in your translation. just because you're going to anticipate questions that NGOs, that committee members could ask you. Now, I don't think it will be super necessary to have these documents have methods of valuation and a lot of accounting terminology that I don't think that will be so necessary. If it was in English or French, I would have told you that yes, it doesn't hurt to put all that information. But of course, if you have to translate it, it's totally fine. As long as you contain that information, we need to have these two presentation, income statement and balance sheet, at least. We need to have the period that is covered. We need to have the currency that is managed. That's also very important. We need to know in which currency this is expressed. And pretty much that. And as much as you can, if you can add more than that, great. That will also be good. Let me get another question. Let me see. Trying to see questions that could be also helpful for most people. Sorry, I'm spending time. I'm reading some of them. Okay, this is something that could be useful. It's very common in NGOs, especially if you applied before or you started creating your profile. We have a procedure for username and password, so we want you to follow that procedure. If you forget your username and password, there is a place there that says forget username and password, you get it. If for some reason the username or the email address change and you don't have access to your profile, then you have to write to us. There is a contact us section that you can use even if you don't have a profile to request that information. Please do that in order for us to give you access. We have a security process, of course, to validate that you belong to that organization. We may need to ask you for additional information, but please, the lack of username and password should not prevent you from applying. So we just need to spend some time in matching you with the profile, and that's very common, especially NGOs that maybe attempted to apply in the past, then for some reason they didn't continue and now they want to restart. So that's also very good. I want to go to the floor again to have some live questions. Let's see if and you can raise your hand. And I have many people. I'll try to be. I'm not going to be able to have you all, but so I'm giving the floor to Mashkur Isa. It's M-A-S-H. And I'll tell you when you have the floor. Okay, now you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to ask, so in question 15, it says, does the organization allow both individuals and organizations to be members? If, for example, you have national chapters in different countries and those chapters, some of them are registered in those countries, do they qualify as member organization under the large parent organization?
Thank you for your question. And so if you have different chapters of your organization, that actually, I mean, the definition of what is a member of the organization is something that, could be discussed, right? If the organization, if these members are really part of the decision-making process of your organization, so this chapter are part of the whole organization and they decide on the direction of the organization through their positions, then definitely you can qualify that as organization members. And you can mention, and you should actually mention them in question 15 as an organization member and list it. I don't know if that was also the purpose of your question, but I want to say that in some occasion, if these organizations are properly registered in those countries, it might be the case that the committee may require you to provide proof of existence of those registrations, in those countries. We normally don't require that. We just need if you have like the international organization or the headquarters registered. We just need the proof of existence of that headquarters. But it's not unusual that for particular registration in some countries, the committee may want to get a proof of the operation on that. I just want to link that to the previous question we got about registration in particular countries that could be problematic. So that could be something that the committee will ask. For the purpose of applying, as long as you have a proof of existence issued by the government, by the applying entity, not the chapters, but the applying entity, we are fine for us. And for your question again, I'll have to see exactly the structure of your organization, but from what you're telling me, it looks like you can count that as organizational members.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All
And
right.
just one more regarding
Sure.
the finances, the financial statement. Would it be, does it have to be right from the inception of when the organization was formed, or does it only have to be the financial statement of the last year?
No, you have to provide us with the most recent one, which may be the last year or not, because it depends on when you prepare your financial statements. It could be different years. So the idea will be to have the more recent one that you have available. If at some point the committee, because this takes time, requires an update on that, they might ask you for an update. But at least at the moment of applying, the most recent one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take another person. I have Virginia Wong. You have the floor, Virginia.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for your presentation. I just have a clarification question regarding your request to quantify the financials as much as possible. If we have an organization that runs mostly on volunteer labor, did you mean that the expectation was for us to assign a monetary value to that volunteer labor or those hours that were worked?
In terms of human resources, of course, it's hard because these people are volunteering, and it's going to be hard to put it. I don't think that's actually possible. So in those particular, in that particular occasion, I don't think you can do it. What I will do in those situations is to put a comment on that and to basically clarify if, for instance, your income doesn't look so high, or like you're really, people could raise questions. So how you're achieving all that work and they don't see a number there, then you may want to clarify that in the comments, explaining what you just told me, that you have a group of volunteers, that they are actually doing this and that activity, and that particular project was achieved in this way. What I was talking about quantifying, I was thinking more of sometimes maybe to achieve to carry out a particular activity, you get donations, and that donation may be in terms of a venue for a meeting, or a particular or in goods, or in, you want to publish something, and they give you the publication for free. I think these things can be quantified, because even though you're getting it maybe for free, or you're getting it at a discount rate, then you still can quantify. Again, if you cannot do it, I know that could be hard in some situation. My advice is always to put in comments and to stress the fact that the numbers may not be as high as one may think by looking at the work and the results you obtain, because of whatever the explanation is. In your case, the volunteers.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered the question.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. The other question that I had was, given the length of the application and review process, you mentioned that it could take over a year. So if bylaws are amended after the submission, after our initial submission, will that affect the application in any way? Are we expected to provide updated copies of the bylaws? Like, what is the procedure?
The procedure is during the moment of review, while we are reviewing the case, you may have the chance to provide additional information if you have new updates. After that, we don't receive anymore, because the application is being reviewed and we cannot have more information to review. Also, it's submitted to the committee, so we cannot really go back to that application. In my experience, of course, you have to provide all up to the moment of applying all the Constitution with all the amendments that you have. That's a requirement. After that, we normally are not going to require more amendments. In my experience in the committee, they normally don't ask for amendments on the Constitution. If you have more, that's normally not a question you're going to get. What you may get, and I was just mentioning before, is updates in the financial statements, because if the process got delayed, of course, reviewing an organization with a financial statement for 2 or 3 years is already not useful. You need to have more recent. If that happened, you will be requested to provide that information, so it's not something that you have to provide. But again, in terms of the Constitution, in terms of amendment, that's not very common. I'm not saying you may not get that question, but it's very, very unusual.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, I'll get one more. I have, sorry, Naseem Anthony. Naseem is N-A-S-E-E-M. You have the floor.
Yes, first of all, I would appreciate the deliberation that you have given and very clarity I have received from you. Actually, I was confused between 1 and 2 questions. One is this, that if some organizations don't have any relationship with Ecosoc organizations, is it still opportunity for the organization to apply, or is it mandatory to be connected with some organization who have already Ecosoc status?
No. That's just a question to have the information about if you are already in connection with those organizations, but definitely that's not implying that organizations that have that connection already have better chances or be considered differently than the ones that don't. Of course, I mean, you're welcome to network with other NGOs just to see how the process works and to learn about Ecosoc. That's always something that I encourage, because that's good from an educational point of view. But in terms of the application process, it's definitely not a requirement. You basically tell the truth. If you don't have any NGO associated with you or you are in contact with, then you just say no. The same, I want to use your question to also explain for there are questions about whether you participating in UN events.
Yes.
And that's the same thing. I mean, if you did, of course, we want to know what was your experience, what you did already. But if you didn't, and one of the reasons you are applying is because you want to, so the consultative status enable you to participate to many events. So it makes sense that you haven't in the past. So if you haven't, it's also not a problem. There's no priority, or there is no NGOs are considered the same whether they attended events or not at the UN. So that's important for you to know. We just want to know if you attended events, and that's it.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, let me see if I have another question. We have a bit more time here. Okay, I respond this quickly. I think I mentioned, but it's never bad to restate it, that all the translations doesn't need to be legally certified. You can do the translations yourself, or you can send it to someone that can do the translation in English or French. We really don't want you to spend money on translation. Of course, you'll spend time because you have to do it, but definitely there is no requirement on our side that this has to be legally, that the notary public has to be involved in these translations. We want to make it easier for you. Unfortunately, we do need the translation because either English or French, that's the language we operate on. So we do need those translations. Let me see other questions. Okay, this is in a way a specific question, but I think you may have we have several participants here, and we will have several cases like this. And this is very common. Universities normally try to apply, but normally it's not the universities, it's specific centers operating within universities. And that could be related to any research center or any body that works within a bigger body. But that particular institute's research center, think tank, don't have legal personality. Unfortunately, if you don't have legal personality, if you are not recognized by the government as such, you cannot apply because we don't have the proof of existence of that entity. Normally, you have two options there, and that's very common. We have to explain that. Either you try to obtain that legal personality. I know that's normally not an easy solution because you also have to convince your parent entity to do that and to be given the chance to basically operate independently, or at least to be recognized independently. But if you have that option, that could be a way to apply. The other way will be that the university or the parent entity applies. And that we have many universities that have been applying in the recent years, even though maybe it's one or two centers there that actually are the ones who are going to be involved. Of course, I know that also not easy because you have to convince the whole university to apply, and also the information that you provide in that case should be the ones of the university. So the applicant now is no longer that center, but is the university. So the financial statement, the constitution, the proof of existence, and the content of the application, even though you may want to put some information about the center, is about the university or about this parent entity. So that will be the way to for these institutes to apply. Unfortunately, the proof of existence, as you already realizing, it's a very strong requirement, and we cannot go over that. Let me see another question we may have here. Okay, this is another important one. They're asking whether the international influence is considered as an important qualification, and if yes, how is it evaluated? What are the major standards? Well, the answer is we are not really, again, we are not making preference of one NGO over the other, pretty much or nothing, you know? So if an organization, an international organization doesn't have more likelihood of obtaining consultative status than one that is national. Everybody can contribute in different ways at different levels, and this is the process open to all NGOs, not only to international big NGOs or NGOs with bigger budgets or that. So we want you to tell us exactly about the coverage, and that's important. The coverage of the organization is not only when it's registered, but also where it is operating. So you can be an organization that is registered in one particular country, but could be operating in many others. So we want to know about that and that particular arrangement. You may have offices in that, so we also want to know if you have offices on that, and maybe you are registered on that, or you may be operating through partners in those particular places. All these ways of working are all fine and all equally acceptable. What is important is that we know the details of that, because again, those otherwise will raise questions, and questions, I mean, it's something we will ask, but it's something you will not have to have many because it delays the case. So we want you to give us as much information as you can from the get-go in terms of your coverage. However, I want to be very clear on that. There is no differential treatment between organizations that operate at different levels with different budgets, or they are all treated equally. They're all given the same chances in the committee. I'll give the floor now to some participant. Let me see. We have still many questions. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to answer all. Too many. Let me see. I'm giving the floor to Mansoura Rasulzadeh. Mansoura, M-A-N-S. Yes,
Yeah.
you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you so much for giving me path to talk. My question is, I'm going to be applicant and I'm in a position of deputy of the organization, not chairman. Is it important that the applicant must be in a higher position, or just my name is enough in government existence document as a deputy, not chairman?
I see,
Thank
I
you so
understand.
much.
Thank you for your question. And no, the answer is anybody, I mean, the person who submit the application and fill out the application, it could be anybody who the organization decides to give access and the username and password. So you can fill out the whole application and you can apply. You can also be the person appointed by the organization to be the contact person. We don't really need to talk with someone with a particular level of the organization. So it's totally fine if you are managing the whole process. Later on, I should not get, this is a little bit of scope of this meeting, but when you get consultative status and you get ground passes, then there is some requirements there on terms of authorization, because now it becomes an issue of security of who can come and who is authorized to represent the organization. But at the application process is totally fine.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a few more minutes. I'm going to give the floor to someone else. Let me see. Sorry, it's taking me time. Okay, I'm giving the floor to Ryan Kaminsky. Sorry, I don't have the full name. Ryan Kaminsky, Ryan, R-Y-A-N.
Thank you so much.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. This has been really helpful, and really appreciate all the work you all are doing. I know this is a lot. My question is just for NGOs that have applied during the previous cycle in June 2020. If there's a rough timeline, if absent any like jarring issues or complications with their applications and back and forth correspondence, just if a rough timeline might be available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan. Yes, I mean, it's hard, honestly, to provide a timeline. Last two sessions, I mean, we didn't have last two sessions, so that's a lot of applications that normally are processed that couldn't be processed. So we have a big delay, as I said. What I can tell you and everybody who has a particular case, I mean, is right now applications received for, if you apply, can you tell me the day you applied? If you recall.
It was the week before the deadline last year in June.
Okay, good. So these applications, for instance, were supposed to be reviewed this year. So if you're not reviewed, I assume you were not, because you apply at the end of the period, you're not going to make it for this May session. But that means that you most likely is going to be on the January or May session next year, depending on the other applications you have before you. I cannot give you a specific things. My guess is that it could be, and I'm giving you a very broad estimate, is next year, January or May, because your application already have priority over people applying right now, because you applied before the deadline last year. Now, exactly whether it's going to be January or May, that's very hard to do. What I recommend all applicants with the same concern is to write to us to follow up on your cases, because we can give you, still we're not going to give you a lot of more precision, but we still can give you at least where you are on the stage. You know, if we already reviewed your case, if we already have questions, if we submitted the case to the committee already, so we can give you some clarity on where you are in the process. Also, you can consult that online. They will give you the status of the case. Again, that doesn't give you a lot of indication because you're together with a large group of people, but that's as far as we can get. I hope that gives some clarity. All right, let me see if we have another chat, another Q&A. Sorry, it's taking me time. I'm scrolling through a big list. Well, one question is related to what I said. What if we are a legal register outside the country we work on? That's as I said, that's a possibility to provide a proof of existence of that country. However, you may already be prepared in your answers, in information you provide, because some delegations could ask you how you are operating in that country that you're working on, and that could be easily answered by providing some kind of explanation, like you work through partners or you work through a particular arrangement. But in terms of requirements, it's fine if you provide that information. If you apply with a legal certificate of another country in which you are different than what you are working on. Okay, let me see if we have. Sorry, I'm getting trouble here. And some questions I think I already answered in terms of registration. I think I've been clear on the timeline. I have some questions about the timeline. I give you the timeline that at least is formally what we follow, and of course the delays we are having because of the pandemic. Okay, I think most of these questions have been addressed. I'm going to now see if to call the floor because I see many hands. That I think will be useful. Maybe someone who didn't raise question. I'm going to give the floor to Bassam Al-Awatchi. Sorry if I don't pronounce it right. Bassam is Bassam, and you have the floor.
Yes, thank you for having me in this webinar. Actually, I would like to ask about the required documents. One of them is the constitutional law of the organization. So, you know, there is another documents like the policies, gender policy, like financial policy, administration policy. Are these documents even required to submitted or uploaded with the along with the constitutional law?
Okay, thank you for your question. And the answer is no, they're not required. Some NGOs provide us with the financial policies and other policies, HR policies. These documents could be useful to upload. We will probably consider them and send it to the committee. In practice, I mean, it's not the required document is the Constitution, because what we want to know is the decision-making process, which is normally not on these policies. These policies provide more details on what you do in particular situation with your finances or what procedures you use, but we normally obtain the Constitution. So you're welcome to submit them, but it's not really a required document, if that's your question.
Thank you very much. Actually, I have another question about the first stage. When I want to make a login, there is a registration. I think the registration stage even have some page, maybe have some information need to submit to create this registration. So You didn't mention the first stage about how can I create the registration.
Yes, you're right. I jumped directly into the application to save time because I don't want to spend time on the creation of the profile. But all this is explained in the website. So you have first to create a profile, which is basically just your name, address, contact information. It's very basic information that you have to provide. And after that, you are given an account with a username and password. We need to approve that, so there is an approval process, but it's done, normally in 24 hours, you get the profile approved. And then after that, you start the application, which is what I showed. I didn't want to do the whole process because it will take me more time. But yes, there is a first step, which is the creation of the profile, which I believe is what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you. I'm going to give the floor to someone else. See. I give the floor to Marina Mikhail. Marina Mikhail. Marina, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. I'm delegated to talk about Elgora Community Development Association. It's an association in Sinai, Egypt. It's already submitted its application, but I have some questions. If there are any further requested information from the association, will it be needed before the session or after the session?
When you say the session, you mean this coming session or the session in which you're going to be reviewed?
Yes, this coming session.
Yeah, this coming session will not affect anybody who is applying right now, because this session is reviewing applications submitted before June 1st last year. Okay, so when you submit your, and you already submitted actually, we're going to look at your applications and we're going to address questions if we have any and ask for additional information if we need. All that, of course, will be done before you are submitted to the session in which you will be submitted, which we aim, again, we cannot promise that, for next year, either January or May 2022. Okay.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, my second question, thank you for this. My second question, if there is an organization which is already have the special consultative status, how it can change to be with general consultative status? What is the process?
Okay, we normally don't talk on this session about this because this is people that are already in status. We are focusing mostly in status, but I'll respond it very quickly. If you need more information, I'll appreciate if you can write to us, and there is a whole process for that. So NGOs that are in special status and wants to get general consultative status, these are different type of status. You can find information. That's something that is decided by the committee when you are granted consultative status or recommended for consultative status, which status you're going to get. So there is a whole process in which you have to apply. But first you have to be granted status. I mean, in your case, you just submitted, from what I understood, you just submitted your application. So first you have to be obtain consultative status, which will be decided by the committee which status. If you are granted special and after you're granted special, you're eligible. If you consider that you fall within the requirements of general consultative status, you can apply for general consultative status as something we call reclassification. That's the term we use. But at this point, for you and I guess everybody who is here who are not really obtained consultative status yet, that's something that should not be in consideration at this point.
Okay, finally, will it be possible to attend the session, the coming session in person? If yes, what is the process?
For the upcoming session, first it's only open for NGOs who are being reviewed in that session. So not all NGOs can attend. It's only NGOs that are being considered in this session, which I believe is none of the participants here. I mean, maybe there are some participants that applied a year ago here, but I guess most of you are not really going to be called for that. It's very strict this year for these participants. There is a whole procedure. An email was just sent yesterday to those participants with this procedure. It's going to be very limited because of COVID. The UN is open, but it has very strict policy. So whoever received that email know exactly what they have to do. Hopefully, in the future, that will be better and we will welcome other participants. But it is the tradition, it's always the case that you're invited to the meeting in which your case is going to be reviewed, not for other cases. Having said that, however, you can follow the entire meeting of every committee, because they're public meetings, through the webcast of the UN. So if you go to the UN webcast, WebUN, you can follow the entire meeting, whether you are a participant or not. That's for the general public. And I actually encourage you to do that, because that's a good way of knowing what's the dynamic of the committee, how your cases are being reviewed, even if it's not your case yet. That's a good thing. The dates of the committee are in our website. They are later in May, in a couple of weeks. And you will see in the UN website how to connect to it. This is something that is open to the public. All right. I know I have a lot of hands here, but I don't have a lot of time. So I will need to stop now. I just want to thank you all for the great response. We got a lot of people joined, and we are very happy for that. We are happy for the interest on the webinar and also the interest on the process, on consultative status. It's a lot of people. I really encourage you, for all of you who are willing to apply, to do it within this month, because of the deadline. That will speed things up for you. We are available to ask us questions at any time. I show you how to access the correspondence. If you have a profile, if you don't have a profile because you're still debating whether you're eligible or not, or whether you're interested or not, you can always go to the contact us and also write us there. Of course, we always prefer that you do it through your profile, because it's easier to identify you, and also because we can associate your question with your application and we know more about you and we can help you better. So we encourage all applicants to participate in that way. But I thank you, all of you who were here. I know you're connecting from parts of the world, different time. We try to be in a reasonable time, but of course some people are really sleeping at this time. It's unavoidable. So I thank you all for the great response. And I think that's it for us. I'm consulting with my colleagues, and I want to thank my colleagues who has been monitoring the whole responses. We got a lot of questions, a lot of hands raised. I hope we were able to raise all your concerns. All right, so that's it for me today. And thank you very much, and good luck with your applications.